Send it by email. Get me flash drive. Yes.
Hello, everyone.
Hey,
Hello.
hi, near you.
Good afternoon. Can you hear me clearly?
Yes.
Okay, thank you very much. My name is Anthony.
I'm listening.
Hi, Philip.
You had 6 streets. Don't spell it out, you know.
Sorry. Hello, Franzo. Can you hear me?
We can hear you.
Okay, thank you. Hi, Miriam. Is that you? Okay. I can't hear you though, but I see that you're responding.
But we can hear you. Are you sure it's not from you? Can you hear us?
Not actually. I'm not hearing you guys, but I know you can hear me. But I can hear you, Franzo, but I can't hear Miriam. So when they're presenting, I may probably not hear them.
Good. Oh. Nice to meet you. Oh.
Hey, what's up?
Hi.
How basically is. You're an interview. So, I'm like, how wait.
Philip, were you able to reach Dr. Yerami? Hello.
Yes, was nice.
Actually waiting
You
for
can speak now. Can you hear us now?
yes.
Don't just speak. Speak and speak again.
You mean me?
Yeah.
Franzo, can you hear me?
We can hear you. But can you hear the panel?
They have to speak. One person should speak because they're not speaking.
Can you hear us?
Yeah, yes, I can hear you. Thank you. So we're actually waiting for Dr. Yerami, which is who is our discussant, but I don't know. I've sent him email, but he seems to be having difficulties joining. But I guess we have to proceed. We have to start. Um, and I think we'll have to go by the program. And by my own, I see that we have 1 hour 30 minutes. We're supposed to have started. We're 3 minutes late already. So I will let Miriam start, and we all have 10 minutes, like I notified everyone.
Yes.
Just try to keep your presentation between 8 to 10 minutes. And when it's, sorry, can you hear me?
Yes, we can hear you.
Yeah, we can.
Okay. So when it's about 3 minutes to go, I will notify you. I would, just call your attention to it. So yeah.
Yes, yeah. Just let me know. Share the slide over. You can just introduce it. Okay, so everybody, my name is Mara Filipini, I'm just from Nigeria. I'm about to say that. So, yeah, I'm speaking about PhD student and Minister Toronto. Coming of Geography and Planning, my third year, my third year. So this presentation is from my ongoing fieldwork. So please, it's still ongoing. Of course, actually, so feedback and comments and of course criticism, constructive. Thank you. So my title is Everyday Encounters, Sino-Nigerian Interactions in Urban Transformation in Lagos. So yeah, this work is to explore the lived realities behind engagement between China and African countries. And I'm using Lagos as a case study of African countries. People in this final one understand that I've heard the word Sino-African, this, and Sino, some call it. And yes, so I'm trying to explore the lived realities in this engagement. So there's been an increased attention to China's economic and political engagement in African cities, particularly since FOCA, which is like 2000 and 2000. And of course, this solution has been said to be a win-win cooperation. The Chinese one is shrine like the win-win. However, on the ground, this mission is sometimes we hear of some uneven relationship, incidents of exclusion, of friction, and what have you in everyday life. This reveals a different dynamic from what the government says about shrine as a mutual beneficial relationship. So I focus on Lagos because of its strategic economic position in Nigeria, West Africa, and even in the world. And of course, Lagos is, has a very dense informal economy. So I'm hoping to look at this issue from the informal economy as opposed to the formal settings, which of course, I don't know. As I go on my food work, I'm still seeing how difficult that would be due to accessing informally, trading channels, which is one of the challenges that possibility research. The third question. So this project is guided by two core questions, which is how will informal interaction between Chinese migrants and Nigerians shape urban life in Lagos? And I mean informal interactions that are not orchestrated by the state or by big institutions. And how do we shape the life of residents? And of course, how do these encounters, what do they tell us about different issues of power, race, and belonging in urban spaces? Next slide. Thank you. So, conceptual framework. Well, it's still a work in progress, but for my proposal and as I go on, I'm grounded research in African urbanism. As you see, I mentioned urbanites. I'm saying I'm very in urbanization because I'm about the lived experience of people. And in this, of course, I follow scholars such as Simone, Ananya Roy, Jennifer Robinson, who have argued that the everyday is a side of urban transformation. It's not only about the infrastructures, which of course the title of this panel itself says beyond the physical infrastructures. So what else is there? What else can we quantify beyond the tangible things we can see? So that's why one of the frameworks I'm hoping to use, so I'm using, is urbanism. Migration studies as well, which of course scholars such as Katsul, Sharikan, she's a geographer, I don't know if you know her, but I'm from geography. So and these scholars interrogate how global mobility is structuring, is being structured and how it is being restricted as well. And also, I'm trying to explore the concept of Black geography, which, well, as coming from the continent, some might say, huh, why? But I mean, I'm from a white institution, but personally, I've actually seen this framework I feel it useful in the sense that although it might be starting from the West, but of course, this challenging something, which is the speciality of Black lives. Like, so, and one of the, I have a personal stake in this actually. I speak Chinese, I speak Mandarin. I did my bachelor's in Chinese studies. I did my master's in China for 3 years. I lived in China for 5 years, and I work with Chinese people and all of that. So, which is actually the very first year in my research in how do they accord between migrants and locals, the people who are actually Nigerians. And maybe I should mention, I was initially hoping to go outside research, so like seeing and discussing in China and here, but of course, I was quick to realize that it's a PhD, it's an investment, and I need to graduate. So yes, so yeah, I'm doing just the one here. Yeah. So okay, just to speak a bit more about African urbanism. So why I chose the framework is because it explores bottom up approach. It's a bottom up approach to the top down. So it's not about the theories in urban studies and how cities are supposed to be, because there's a set notion of how we expect cities to be. But then African urbanists and global south urbanists are actually challenging the saying that, okay, not all cities can be in a certain way. Especially cities in the global south, cities in Africa. And that does not mean that they're not urban. Does not mean that they're not urbanizing. So just they're doing it on their own terms in a certain different way from what is understood in theories of initial theories of urbanization. Yeah, next slide, please. So for migration studies as well, I find this important as well. You can have a worldwide perspective of migration. African policy scholars such as Castles, who have argued that definition of migration, if it's been too rigid, then a lot of things can be left out. But of course, this is not to say that we don't need a definition, but I am taking migration loosely in the sense that as active argument goes, a rigid distinction in terms of migration can be misleading, as sometimes international migration occurs between distances such as Nigeria and Ghana, with being a Benin Republic actually, and Nigeria. That's an international migration actually. But then internal migration can also be far, such as maybe traveling from here to Kaduna, from Lagos to Kaduna, distance now, farther than from Lagos to Benin Republic, which is another territory. So I'm not being too rigid in my approach to what migration is for this research. And of course, I put in mind feminist scholars' arguments, such as Eckhart, who says that always argue that when in an era of migration, actually movement is being restricted more and more. And this is being influenced by different policies and border practices in this new era. So as I mentioned earlier as well, that was at least which underscored the agency and resiliency of Black lives. So it's not just about what it ought to be or what it is bred to be, but also how are these people themselves perceiving this. So the subjectivity, exactly. So I've heard a lot of, okay, research should be more objective, but then I know scholars have been arguing about the subjectivity of research as well. So I think it's one of the reasons why I'm choosing this framework. So my methodology, well, I'm using qualitative an ethnographic case study, which is, as I said earlier, based on Lagos. And so far, actually, I've gotten like 80 interviews, which includes with Nigerians and Chinese people, different informal industry, informal economy, actually, which is, I mean, market spaces such as Malobu market, Alaba market, and such market that are not, I don't say they're not structured, because that's not the structure themselves, but it's not a formal employment setting. All you can have is that some of them do have this formal settings as well. So these are the people that I'm engaging in my research, and Chinese people actually engage in these economies as well, as opposed to the big firms like CCC, and the like. Of course, I'm also exploring media discourses and academic documents to trace this broader narrative.
Miriam, you have 2 more minutes.
Okay, thank you. So yeah. So the analytical approach, well, as I said, I'm still working on it, so it's still a work in progress. But I hope to use thematic analysis of interview and observation, but also triangulating with the archival materials and also the policy documents. So, yeah, what exactly am I going to need to look at this? Said earlier. So it's how exactly China has positioned itself as an ally of the global south. In fact, it's a big brother. We're partners, we respect each other compared to the West, as it says, and as several Africans also say. But then in practice, how do the people living on the ground, the everyday people actually perceive or experience this relationship? And that is exactly what I'm hoping to get to in my research. And so far, one of the few things that I've come across is interactions are mostly economical, because I've been trying to understand what sort of encounters actually interactions occur between them. But from what I've found so far, it's been mostly economic, in the sense that even those that work together, once they leave the workspace, that's a relationship they have. It doesn't go beyond that. But of course, my further analysis, I'm going to employ theory of simply how the other things explain, which have not gotten to us. It's still ongoing. Another thing is that there's a mutual distrust between both sides. And of course, even with all of this, there's still unexpected connection, unexpected, unscripted display of interactions. For instance, I came across a Chinese family that takes a public transit, and in the public transit, they get into Nigerians. So even in this rigid setting we have, there's still this unexpected and unscripted encounters at home, which I hope that with my further analysis of my data, I'll be able to say more about. So conclusion. So Chinese influence in Lagos is not monolithic. It's and the city actually is being I feel from my findings so far, the city is actually being shaped through informal and racial encounters, not just through the bridges that China is building, but also through these interactions that occur between our people and the people on every day. And these interactions also reveal sites of tension, possibility, and transformation. So I hope that with this taking every day as a sign of struggle, we'll be able to explain or which contribute to the literature on science conditions on about what exactly occurs beyond the physical infrastructure. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Miriam. I would encourage other presenters to keep it short. You actually use 12 minutes, but I would encourage us to just keep it within 10 minutes so that we can also have a conversation. Thank you so much. So the next presenter, please. Philip, maybe you can go.
Okay, I'll start. My name is Philip Louisa. I am also a first-year PhD student at Florida International University. My focus is on religious studies and the intersection with international relations. So I should filter out my presentation. So what I decided to start a particular research paper on was based off of the initial reporting of Chinese interference in connection with the Belt and Road Initiative. A lot of state and non-state actors as it relates to religious practices on the ground of the workers, finding that they are facing reports of harassment and restrictions in terms of both Muslim and Christians when it comes to their times and abilities to practice their faith during the times of work. So I decided to start the initial process of investigating this. As China distorts its model of development built around Confucius' ideal of collective sacrifice for the sake of development, how will this reshape Africa's cultural worldview built around communal reciprocity and spiritual health? So, in geo-religion and Chinese foreign policy, Xing Hao and Zhao Lei argue that nations' religious attributes and its geo-religious locations profoundly influence and to a certain extent define the security strategy and foreign policy. The era of religious studies for confined to isolated states of society has passed. So the Chinese themselves are quite aware of the importance and the relevancy of religion, both as an arbiter as also as a blockage to foreign policy. So in my study, I chose to use my methodology was qualitative interpretive approach, relying mainly on secondary sources to understand meaning and perspective rather than just numbers. I drew upon many academic journals, books, policy reports, case studies, and documented cultural narratives to build a balanced view grounded in world theory and global context. We also so it's myself and my co-author, E.T. Saldar, who will be working here. We use thematic synthesis to connect current ideas and interpret findings within historical context, and we apply critical discourse analysis to unpack how narratives develop, shape, understanding. Key disclaimer: I'm going to use the term African, and I understand that we are not one bunch. We are 54 different countries. I know that we're also in 3,000 different groups. A lot of my work is based off of the philosophical and religious work that was done by John Dee, who did his own work on analyzing the religious and philosophical ideals and abilities and understandings of African people. Focused primarily on the view and so I'm stating this as this is a starting point to further research. So China has accomplished the most unimaginable task of lifting hundreds of millions of people out of poverty, religious and ignorance. As of 2025, 53 out of the 54 African countries have signed memorandums of understanding. China to participate in the development initiative. The only African nation that has not joined has not joined Belt and Road Initiative is Japan, which maintains diplomatic relations with Taiwan so that other people. BRI's extensive reach across Africa includes major infrastructure projects and roads, ports, highways, and facilities affecting China's deepening engagement with the economy. So, for all of this universalist rhetoric, solidarity, and development, the BRI, when stripped to its core, represents a new form of economic expansionism, a softer version of power politics, exercise to forgive so develop. As the old saying goes, beware of reach bearing gifts. Much like the famed Trojan horse of antiquity, the BRI carries not so subtle attempts to influence political. Africa and China already shared long-standing relations dating back to the early days with CCP. Mao Zedong viewed the people of Africa as natural allies in the struggle against the shared experience of China. Later, the Bandung Conference, under the influence of Zhao Enlai, provided an opportunity for China to further solidify its commitment to non-aligned movement and South solidarity. Next slide. So it's important to understand why religion is so important to Africa. At the current moment, Africa has the largest growing population of both Christians and Muslims. At the moment, we have 630 million Christians in Africa, which are about 45% of the population. By 2060, that's say it reached a little bit more. It's also the fastest growing Christian populations are in Nigeria, the DRC, and also Congo and Ethiopia. On the Islamic side, over 440 million Muslims are in Africa. About 40% of the population. North Africa is predominantly Muslim, Egypt, Algeria, and Morocco. Sub-Saharan Muslim population is also growing rapidly, especially in West Africa. The trend also for Islam as well in Africa is Sub-Saharan Africa is continuing to see growth by 2016. So the African worldview is deeply shaped and layered in metaphysical understanding, blending spiritual, communal, and natural realms into everyday life, maintaining prominent thoughts and experiences to avoid disrupting spiritual, social, environmental balance. Traditional identity has been anchored more in tribe, family, or religious community than modern national works. For African Muslims, loyalty to the Foreigner Ummah often outweighs attachment to the faith. In places like Ethiopia, this Orthodox state, rather than the unified civic identity, often binds nations together despite persistent fragmentation. And after that, historically, China, next time, China favored secular governance and officially atheism, especially since the Communist Party came in power. Tradition, Confucianism, and both beliefs shape everyday moral life. but did not function as organized scriptural religions like Christianity or Islam. In the modern era, religion is treated as a private and personal matter and is heavily regulated to prevent challenges of private authorities. Government closely monitors religious groups and restricts activities that might create alternative systems of loyalty. The CCP resists religious worldviews that challenge the state's sole authority, seeing them as threats to legitimacy. In contrast, many African societies grant significant religious moral authority to scripture, creating tensions with secular governments. For many Chinese managers, next slide. For many Chinese managers, they practice a form of Confucianism that has molded into the communist model, which emphasizes a collective form of self. So they are willing to suffer for whatever it takes to build the greater model of the Communist Party. This model is called the Shiku model, which is eating bitterness, which upholds silent endurance and personal sacrifice as moral virtue to strengthen the individual as funded progress. In contrast, African community values relational harmony and mutual responsibility, viewing suffering not as incredibly virtuous, but something to be shared, interpreted, and healed within the community. While Chiku glorifies enduring hardship and national goals, African communalism prioritizes sustaining relationships and restoring dignity to collective split. In African thought, as explained by John Beatty in African Religion and Philosophy, citing Namba in the previous death, personhood is deeply rooted in community and ancestral ties, creating concentric circles of the model. Time in the worldview is not wasted on struggle. It's valued in meaningful and event relationships rather than rigid numerical products. People organize their days around significance, communal activities like gathering, farming tasks, or rituals, rather than a platform. This could not come out to a sense of time, prioritizes human connection and social harmony, ensuring tasks are completed from communities spreading not just to the top dictates. When Chinese product managers impose strict and inflexible schedules without accounting for this, it can create friction, not because African workers value time, but because their understanding of time serves people and communities well. So, a study by the African Labor Research revealed widespread poor working conditions and labor abuse by Chinese companies in 10 African countries, highlighting how high unemployment and weak labor protections push many into precarious and informal work. While some Chinese employees do pay above average wages for skilled roles, wage abuse, exploitative contracts, and anti-union practices remain common across industries. I cite this because it shows Chinese are already known for exploiting workers, abusing workers, sexual violence against people workers. So even though the actual CCP in its official writing states that it's going to practice balanced approach where it understands its constituents, what's being done on the ground is vastly different. Next slide. Belt initiative can be seen as a form of new independence, echoing Wall Street's growth systems theory, where African nations risk staying.
You have 2 more minutes.
Okay, so it's a form of new independence, which is shaped off of the idea of breaking down the sovereignty of particular nations while trying to preach this idea of solidarity. But we've seen the sovereignty breaking down by the fact that most of the nations that are now under the BRI vote the way China wants them to vote. Nobody goes against China now. We have also most of the nations are against Tibet, most nations are against Taiwan. So, in conclusion, for us, what we're proposing is we want to conduct a more empirical research, detailed case studies to better understand these dynamics and carry out a cross-regional comparison, inform policy and improve practice on the ground. For Chinese companies, we want them to acknowledge that religion is an important part of daily life for many African workers. It's a part of the soul of the African people. Engage employees to dialogue, understand how work schedules and policies are fair, will be straight, clear, and flexible guidelines to respect diversity, and train managers in cultural sensitivity. For African governments, we were asking that they strengthen their legal protection for religious foundations at work, empower unions and grassroots one-shot skilled employees accountable, share workers' same practices, protected the law. Thank you.
All right, thank you, Philip. Thank you so much. Okay, Emmanuel, Dr. Emmanuel, can you
Yeah, I'm with you. Good afternoon,
Okay.
all.
Thank you. Good afternoon.
Yeah. My discussion revolves around um, Chinese involvement in Nigeria's resources, environment, and local economy, interrogating the implications on economic development. And it's a joint paper by myself and Samba Ba. Now, the paper, can you help me share the slide from there? I'm having some difficulty sharing the slide there, but I'm sure we all have the slides. So it's not, I mean, we can be going through it together. The slide one, it brings up tries to outline the way I'm going to take the paper. And we have the introduction, the methodology. I tried looking at Nigeria-China's relationship back in time. Of course, in the available literature, no specific mention is made of Nigeria-China's relations. But taking it from a general African perspective, believing that at various times in history, hello, can we hear me?
Yes, clearly. Very well.
Yeah. At various times in history, we have had interaction with them, and considering the fact that, of course, anti-colonialism, the African area was always expanding and constructing based on the existing power. So we try to look at it from that angle, first from that angle. And we said this was how the economy continued up till late into period. On the methodology, the qualitative method is used. Data we obtain from primary and secondary source and analyzed based on my background as a student of history or as a historian, as I would say. And I say that this relationship dates back to the 1960s. And it has continued up till from that time to different period. But really, we also looked at the relationship up till of recent. Again, the Nigeria first contact with China took place in the 1960s when Chinese delegations came to Nigeria on invitation to attend the country's independence. And the delegation brought, of course, message of goodwill to the Nigerian government. In February 1971, Nigeria officially established diplomatic ties with China, and this had continued up till recent. And to be fair, there has been very robust relationship between Nigeria and China. Of course, we say that as at 1993, up to 1993, we had the Chinese investment in Nigeria grew from 35 million to 97 million US dollars in 1993, and it reached $327 million by 1997. By 1913, it was estimated that Chinese had about 13 billion US dollars, and in factual terms, that non-financial direct investment in Nigeria stood at 1.79 billion. That's about 293.5 billion Nigerian dollars as in 2013. And this in Nigerian term has been very rewarding, especially considering the fact that as at 1915, the Nigerian president then, General Muhammadu Buhari, had made a joke, during the Forum on China and African Cooperation, agreed that Chinese happen to be one of Nigeria's best investors. And I think that actually led to the government opening doors to the Chinese government to invest in various resources. Now we're talking of natural resources in the Nigerian area. Of course, this took a very radical dimension from around the COVID period. Of course, the Nigerian area has so much resources, but unfortunately, these resources are found in areas where Nigeria government or the Nigerian people have the rural areas where you have the people basically agricultural communities. Unfortunately, although the native Nigeria extractive industrial record shows that of the extracting industries in Nigeria, Chinese own a large chunk of it. But where the problem lies now is the fact that in this interaction, although it may be rosier at the national level, that is the government at the national level, the Chinese government and the Nigerian government, the argument of this paper is that at the local level, that it has not been rosy for the Nigerian people, especially the agricultural societies. Now, the research specifically focused on areas around Osun State and some part of Nigeria, some part of northern Nigeria, as far as the Zamfara area. Of course, we discovered that, yes, the mining industry in Nigeria predates the 2019-2020 beginning of interaction between Nigeria and Chinese. But these societies or societies around this area kept saying that, look, before this time, those that were extracting this in this gold, especially gold, were experts. They talked of the Hausa communities. Of course, for those of us down here, anybody from northern Nigeria are Hausas. But we discovered that they are specialists in this mining industry. Of course, in the north, knowing the history of the northern Nigeria, you know that the Makera community, the people, the Makeras, are in charge of gold. So it's a professional business in northern Nigeria. But with the coming of the Chinese into the business, the communities have experienced so much stress in the sense that over the years, these communities have either had their water system destroyed, or their farming, their farm produce destroyed, or the communities suffer from serious health situation. And this has, over the years, affected the production of the agricultural community. Take, for instance, the communities in Ifewara in Osun State here. It has been discovered that this community, over the years, these Chinese mining companies have been able to set sort of problem between the people, that is, turning communities over against each other by buying up their land and mining land, and this has affected their agricultural production. Of course, in some other areas where the agricultural production is not affected directly, there have been cases of explosion. The careless nature of the instrument used for mining has led to situations where these people of accidental explosion leading to death. This has been the case in Ibadan as well as a part of Ife. Of course, we also have areas where the waters, like I said, of these communities are destroyed, and these have made it impossible for these communities to have their normal life. In fact, over the years, we have had cases of waterborne diseases as a result of the inclusion of metals and all others. In fact, of recent, we had the same case. Even in the university community where I belong to, Obafemi Awolowo University, where I belong to, we have had cases of the system, the water system destroyed. So much so that the dam all of a sudden turned milky. And the student had to go on rampage until the Chinese firms were stopped from. And the paper goes on and on to discuss this. But I would like us to go to, starting from page 44 of the slide, where I tried showing, for those of, I think I'm sure we all have it. The first slide there shows my activities in the field. The second one shows mining activities, the artisan mining at Biogi site at Arimoro in Elisha. The third is also an agricultural site, an agricultural land, which due to mining activity has been destroyed. That's page 46 of the slide. If you go to page 47, you see how the water system of these indigenous people have been destroyed. If you go to page 48, the same. The activities of the miners have made some of this land, although the law has agreed that when you mine, you should do it in such a way that this land can be reclaimed and for agricultural purpose. But over the years, we discovered that one, the waterways are blocked, the lands are not replenishable. On page 49, behind me, you see flooding caused as a result of mining activities affecting agricultural land. This continues to the next page. And of course,
Akubo, sorry to interrupt you. You have 2 more minutes, please.
Okay, fine. I'm just on page 53 or there. Yeah, 53. The popular Oshun Grove, a religious site, you will see that such has also affected the area. And it goes on and on. And yet these people carry out this thing with reckless abundance, the government supporting them. And of recent, we have discovered that these people or these businessmen hiding under the name of their state, of their government, have been involved in sponsoring terrorism. Not directly, but some of the people that they use in doing this work have been one way or the other linked to supplying terrorists either information or weapons. The activity, the summary, in conclusion, the paper argues that there is need for government and all other agencies to regulate the activities of these bodies. That yes, while it brings in so much money, that the local communities who are agricultural oriented, whose life depends on agriculture, should also be safeguarded. Thanks. Thank you for listening, and I hope to hear more interaction from all of us. Thank you.
Thank you so much. I guess Akinola, you should come up. Thank you.
Good evening, everyone. My name is Akinola. I'm an independent researcher, and I'm presenting on the topic leveraging Afrobeat as public diplomacy to Nigerian relation. Can Nigeria also win Chinese public hearts and minds? Recent events such as the Russian-Ukraine war, as well as the Israeli-Ukrainian conflict, have shown us that reliance on high-powered measure of military capability can be counterproductive, if not costly. And it has also, as Professor Joseph Nye highlighted, that it is most time today not the side with the biggest military that wins, but the side that tells the best story. One country that understands this lesson is China. Since the establishment of the Forum for China and African Cooperation in the year 2000, China has employed some soft power strategies. In fact, you can see from the establishment of the Belt and Road Initiative, the giving of loans, the construction of railways and infrastructural development across African countries are not really meant to achieve philanthropic goals. They were actually meant to, as a foreign policy objective of China engendering the attraction, aspiration, and the admiration of African public in such a way that they influence the minds of African public so that most people in Africa will think of the Chinese government as federally reliant. The literature on Chinese soft power over to Africa have always regarded African countries as passive recipients of Chinese soft power because of Chinese rising political and economic clout. So they established, for instance, this I was coming, I saw the Confucius Society. Africa is just to receive. We are not really doing anything to reciprocate or to counter what the Chinese government is doing in Nigeria. How are we going to win Chinese public the way they are winning our public attitude here? So this paper arguing that is a kind of counter-argument that the Afrobeat, which is a rising popular genre of music, not just in West Africa, but of Nigerian origin, offer Nigeria an opportunity to reposition the country in Sino-Nigerian relations in such a way that we are not just passive recipients of Chinese soft power vouchers alone. We are also actively engaging in such a way that we are fostering the attraction of Chinese public to Nigerian culture. Now, this research is obviously guided by Joseph Nice's theoretical postulation, soft power and public diplomacy. The idea of soft power is just that the normal definition of power means that ability to get what you want through force. But with soft power, you get what you want through attraction. It's a kind of power that's leveraged on attractive qualities. So, and if a country has attractive features, when you look at the United States of America today, you can't help but think of Hollywood. You can't help but think of democratic values of freedom. You can't help but think of America as a dream country. These are attractive features that the American government has leveraged over the years to win the hearts and mind of people all over the world. And according to Joseph, now who's an American by the way, he believes that political values, culture, and as well as foreign policy, when they are seen as legitimate, kind of they are the source of soft power. But for soft power to be activated, it requires public diplomacy, which is a kind of diplomacy that is different from the one we are used to where government officials interact with one another. In public diplomacy, government of country A engage with the public of country B with the intention of influencing their attitude. So as if country B is a democratic country, when you influence the opinion of people in country B, people of country B will influence their government decision making. And China has been able to leverage on this. Now, like I said, because of our time, I'm going to skip the issue of Nigerian relations. But when the literature describes China as a strong actor of soft power projection, I think that observation is a little bit wrong because during COVID-19 outbreak, we saw how China is not really as popular in the African mind as we thought. For instance, let's not forget when they sent the 18 medical doctors as part of their medical diplomacy to assist the Nigerian government with containing the COVID. You saw the public backlash that greeted the Chinese doctor. And the way many media houses condemn these Chinese doctors. These are things that in other African countries, they welcome them as coming to help. But in Nigeria, the Nigerian public actually saw that as a kind of violation of their sovereignty. And to me, that actually opened a gap. It shows that while China has been successful in building some kind of elite diplomacy, a fostering of engagement between African leaders and Chinese government, it has not really been successful in creating that awareness of admiration in the hearts and minds of Africans. And during that same COVID-19, let's not forget how Nigerians, as well as other national of other African countries in Guangzhou, were maltreated in China on the ground of they were quarantined there. And in fact, that one even created a kind of diplomatic row between Nigeria and China to the extent that the Minister of Foreign Affairs had to summon the Chinese ambassador to appear before it, which is something that Nigeria has really never done, considering that Nigeria has always toed the line of China. So my argument is that on the part of China, even though their public diplomacy, they were actually activated, we saw the failure in the sense it displayed a kind of a lack of people-to-people diplomacy, okay, to foster attraction. But on the part of Nigeria, sadly, Nigeria has never, in its history, leveraged on the ideals of soft power, the ideas of public diplomacy. Foreign policy makers in Nigeria always rely on the traditional understanding of diplomacy as one you have to engage with state or officials. So so we now situate our argument that the Afrobeat is a kind of counter soft power approach that Nigeria can actually leverage upon to win Chinese heart and mind. So the view is that Afrobeat is actually a public diplomacy instrument. We all say that music is a universal language. True. That's because it resonates with everybody. But right from time immemorial, countries have always leveraged on the power of music to achieve their foreign policy objectives. In history, one of the most successful music diplomacy is jazz diplomacy that the United States of America employed during the Cold War. And through the jazz diplomacy, America was able to portray the image of a diverse nation, a country of liberal values. And we argue that Afrobeat too is a public diplomacy instrument because it has the potential to be a public diplomacy instrument. Let's not forget that Afrobeat artists, whether it's Burna Boy or Whiskey, they now have much influence that transcend Africa to Europe and North America. This makes them some kind of cultural ambassador because whenever they go and play or in a filling stadium, they are communicating, they are not just advertising themselves, they are also showcasing the values of Nigeria, whether it's creativity, youthfulness, innovation, and what have you. So, interesting thing is that even though the Nigerian government has not been able to leverage upon the popularity of Afrobeat as the foreign policy objective, we see that the cultural space in China is even opening up to Afrobeat, where some musicians in China are trying to incorporate some rhythm of Afrobeat into their song. But most importantly, there are three dimensions of public diplomacy. There's daily communication. Daily communication is in the sense that when country A is using public diplomacy, it enables country A to communicate to the people of country B directly. Afrobeat artists can do that through their communication with their fans who are not just Nigerian. And through such communication, they can also, in a way, project the image of the country. Then the second dimension of public diplomacy, there's strategic messaging, where countries, government itself, try to reframe these Afrobeat messages in a way that will rebrand the country, in a way that will bring about tourism, in a way that will lead to more economic development. And the third dimension of public diplomacy, which is building long-term relationship. Public diplomacy is a two-way communication. If an artist is singing, there are audience that are listening, and it allows for some kind of collaboration between artists of different countries. So if the Nigerian government is able to successfully leverage on that, this will not just promote interaction, it will also disperse some of the stereotypes that make the people in Guazo to discriminate against Africans. Because when you listen to some music, you learn the language, in a way you learn the values, and that influences you to see the people of such country in a different light. However, we notice some challenges that the reasons why Nigeria will find it difficult to leverage on Afrobeat as a public diplomacy tool. The first thing is that Nigerian foreign policy makers have never really understand the utility of soft power public diplomacy. So in that sense, the Minister of Foreign Affairs might not even see why you will see someone like Whiskey as a cultural ambassador of the country.
Akinola, you have 2 more minutes, please. Sorry.
Another limitation is in China itself. The essence of public diplomacy is to influence the attitude of foreign public. But in China itself, because of the top-down nature of communication, foreign policy does not really, public opinion does not influence policymakers in China. But even despite that, the major limitation is there's one country that is more successful in using music for public diplomacy, and that's South Korea. Everywhere you have K-pop. The popularity of K-pop is not because of the K-pop artists themselves. It's actually because South Korean government has made huge investment. And for Nigeria to start championing these Afrobeat artists in China, they are going to have to compete with other cultural influence in the country. So then lastly, we argue that one of the ways that Nigeria can actually bypass this limitation is, first of all, we know that government has the issue of not doing well when it's embarked on project. There should be a form of government-led initiative or private sector-driven, in the sense that while government provides the overall strategy, this Afrobeat will still be championed by the individual artists themselves, but the strategy of engaging will be incorporated. And the intention is actually to reimagine Sino-Nigerian relations beyond hard power. That is, Nigeria must embrace people-centered diplomacy by leveraging Afrobeat not just as an entertainment, but as a soft power asset of engendering the attraction, admiration, and aspiration of not just Chinese people, but people all over the world.
Thank you. Thank you so much, Akinola. So we'll go over to our last presenter today, which is Aditi.
Hello, good evening. I would like to present my screen if that is okay. I would like permission for that.
Yes, please, you can go on.
I would need the permission from the host so that I can share the presentation on Zoom.
Send request.
Can you send a request?
Yes.
Yes. Okay, let's make our post. Yes. Okay.
I don't think I'm able to send requests.
Try it again.
Yes, it's working. Perfect. Thank you. Is my screen on?
Yes.
Yes.
All right, great. So as you can see, the title of my research presentation is Giving Voice, Children's Rights and Policy in China and Africa Development. And what exactly is going to take to change that? This research is a proposal to understand how child rights, intergenerational governance, and ethical accountability can be some of the foundation principles of long-term policy. However, there is a development paradox here. All countries within Africa and China have signed the biggest child rights convention, which is the CRC, yet children remain consistently invisible when it comes to formation of policy and implementation of it furthermore. There are huge investments, as we've seen in previous presentation, that involves education, health, economics, infrastructure, even media. However, when it comes to collaboration with children, it is close to minimal. At present, there are about 650 million children in Africa, with nearly 40% of Africans being under 15 years old. This exclusion is seriously dangerous and problematic. Why does this research matter? Children have been historically passive. They've been viewed voiceless and almost incompetent to participate in decision making. However, we've seen of late that that is not the case. And as children, I think we should also remember how it felt like to not be taken seriously. And working in this space of impact with children, I've firsthand witnessed the exclusion when it comes to policy making and implementation, as I mentioned earlier. This research aims on being a bridge in understanding children's perspective in intergenerational reformation, because we're no longer just talking about justice and governance and safeguarding, because we're no longer just talking about protection. The two important questions that I often find myself asking is, why are children often absent when it comes to shaping the decisions about their present and future? And how can we move from just working towards benefiting them to involving them? If we look at the processes that have happened over the decades in terms of formulating rights for women, rights for people with disability. There have been serious consultations that have happened with them. Why not children? However, it's changing of late. So participation has to be a compulsion. It has to be an imperative. Children can no longer just be bystanders because exclusion leads to misaligned projects and inefficient and unfair use of resources. Participation in extension demonstrates ownership and long-term engagement. Fair representation will lead to legitimacy, relevance, and sustainability when it comes to China and Africa partnerships. If we are not talking to children, how can we help children? How can we design policies that are for children? Because they're not just for our future, they are our present. What we do today and how we do it shapes the world that we all inherit. The core of this thesis is to understand how governance, socio-cultural norm, political settings are enabling or blocking meaningful child participation. It's to understand how their voices, their agency, and their perspectives can be intentionally incorporated, and we can go from making policy for children to policy with children. This is the biggest injustice of exclusion that we are witnessing and really not doing much about it because it is still in the area of lack of awareness. We have to move from tokenism to genuine partnership. We have to move from adult-centric governance to intergenerational reformation, from silence to shared power and responsibility. The main research objective and questions are how, as I mentioned earlier, I will just move on from this very quickly, is how can we embed children's voice and agency into development frameworks? Because everything that we have looked at so far, it involves children. What are the systems and norms that enable or constrain participation? What are the power dynamics that affect agency? What does intergenerational governance look like? And understanding China-Africa frameworks and how can they be reinfigured? The focus is, of course, Africa, but primarily our work is already with these countries of DRC, Burundi, and South Sudan. And we've had children share their living experiences with them, even though these numbers are not real representation of what actually happens on ground. 25,000 children working in cobalt mines in DRC is not a fair representation. 90% of children in Burundi still live in poverty despite of the funds that are poured into that country. And we know South Sudan is the last country to ratify CRC, and it is a country that is seriously threatened by war and displacement. So what are some of the governance and cultural realities that we are looking at? As I mentioned that the systems that we have are adult-centric, they still have colonial legacies, and they have authoritarian tendencies, leaving very limited space for marginalized communities like children to express freely what their needs and their wants are. Fragile systems like the countries that I mentioned, they lack the institutional capacity resources to actually have the spaces to implement child participation. Public entitled to, which leads to lack of safe and structured spaces and limiting to children's role in public and civic life. The proposed research design is multi-case qualitative design, whereby we plan on doing thorough research on the current policy and strategic collaboration and analysis, focus groups and intergenerational dialogues from children 10 and above, key informant interviews, surveys, and field observations, of course, documentation and audiovisual notes as well. The participation strategy would be including children from the design of the research itself. That means the strategic notes, the surveys, the tools, the questions, to data collection, ensuring that the fair number of children are data and it's not misinformed by the adults who are filling on behalf of the children. The analysis of the research would also have children along with the dissemination and publication, ensuring that the whole process is child-friendly. This is a framework that we are proposing. The PPT and the research proposal itself is with the panel, and I would at a later date, of course, would like to have an in detailed conversation on this. But it is a circular flow, as you can see, because a subject like child rights and participation cannot be hierarchical, which is another challenge. But this is a circular process that we are proposing. It is relational in terms of the context, the demographic, of the countries that we're working with, and it is scalable in terms of it can be implemented locally and it can go at the level of legislation. These are some of the conceptual models we are referring to. They have successfully demonstrated child participation and its impact on the society and the communities. They've shown these models, these practices have shown all around the world how involving children in everyday decision making can have a long-lasting feedback in our society. Some of the contributions that we are anticipating is the inclusion of child consultation in all structures that are concerning children and youth. Intergenerational planning bodies, core teams, as we like to call it, from local to international level, advocating for safeguarding mechanisms, independent safeguarding mechanisms that have reporting and also how to take action. Legal child participation clauses in all agreements that happen at bilateral and multilateral level. Some of the challenges that we've already encountered and are also anticipating is the lack of documentation on specifically the subject of child participation, let alone children's rights.
You have
Difficulty,
2 minutes.
and I am on my last slide, so that's fine. Thank you so much. Difficulty accessing the most violent area, because those are the children that we really want to reach. We cannot have children's rights for everyone and not have these rights reach to those children. The ethical complexity that, of course, comes with the subject that we're dealing with, it has to be dealt with a lot of care, with a lot of love and a lot of patience. The cultural resistance to non-traditional participation. I'm from India, and we share some of the common ideas on how children should be raised. So we faced resistance on that level already, and political insensitivity to taking children seriously. So lastly, the conclusion is that excluding children from matters that concern them is a form of harm, is a form of violence that we all are somehow involved in by choice or not. And this research is proposing, yes, research plus a model on how we can invoice an agency in decision making, especially for the cooperation. And hence it would lead to legitimacy, relevance, and sustainability of these partnerships. The disclaimer, as I've said, that this is my very first research proposal presentation, and I'm very honored to be a part of such a diverse panel, and I'm looking forward to the next conversations. This is not to attack any country. We understand it's a very sensitive subject. We just want to understand what are the gaps, what are the patterns, and what can we do to really fill it.
Thank you so much, Aditi. Thank you, everyone. So we have less than 40 minutes to discuss. Our discussant, unfortunately, did not show up, but I actually prepared for this. So hello, can you hear me?
Yes.
Yeah, we are.
Okay, so I'll be sending a feedback based on the paper based on your papers that you submitted. So what I'm going to do just to highlight some of the questions I had while reading your paper, and you guys can respond to it quickly. So first of all, I will go to Miriam. Your presentation was really nice. I enjoyed it, most especially because you are speaking as someone who have been in China and understand the bottom-up context. The reality on ground is usually in contrast with the official perspectives we see online. I also was in China. I lived in China and did my master's in China. So, this is actually what's motivating this panel. So in your discussion, you started the discussion part of your paper, making an argument or advancing an argument, which is rather than replacing Western models, Chinese engagement often mirrors familiar logics of racial capitalism, spatial stratification, and exclusion. But what I was curious about is about the existing argument in this field of study, especially when it regards to Chinese expatriates. There is usually this argument that Chinese expatriates in Africa differ from the Western expatriates. Most especially, they live in local places with the locals, they work. So I want to understand how your paper or your argument can respond to this sort of argument, this existing argument, because it's a granted argument within this China-African field of studies. Another question I had for you what is based on your findings. Based on your findings, you said mutual distrust, and it was three things actually. Three things. You said mutual distrust, economically bounded interaction, which is that when the economic incentives are not there, there's usually no interaction. So you talked about it as something, I don't know if you consider it as something that runs beyond the economic perspective. I noted down some books which I think could also help you if you've not seen it. This is a book by Dakota Frank, published in 2015. The Discourse of Race in Modern China, published by Oxford University. And then a recent book by Kwang Mingwei, Reconfiguring Racial Capitalism in South Africa. So these books kind of talked about the social and cultural dynamics of this racial interaction or mistrust between Africa and the Chinese people. So I think you can also consult this book just to sharpen that argument. Like I said, I would send a feedback, but for now you can probably respond to that argument so that I can.
Yeah. We have questions in the house. I'm sorry, I think the second question that about the distrust.
Okay, so the question I asked is based on an existing argument within the field of study, which is that Chinese differ in their models and in their approach of relationship with Africa.
The second one.
So the second one is not a question. It's not a question.
So we have other questions from the house. Do we take them or should
so I don't know if you. No, I don't have any question. I don't have any question because of time. I will send further questions.
Okay, we have questions
so that I can go over to other panelists. Can you hear me?
Yes, you can. Can you hear us?
Hello.
I can hear.
Yeah, what did you ask?
We have questions in the house.
I can hear. Okay, we have a question from the audience.
Yes, good. Go ahead. Okay, thank you very much. Good evening. Can I go ahead, please? Okay, good evening, everyone. I would like to, I'm Oluwatosin Abidoye from the Department of English, University of Ibadan. Thanks to the presenters for a rich understanding of the China-African relationship. I would like to have some questions. I will try as much as possible to be very brief. Now, to the first presenter, you said you conducted interview for 70% Nigerians and 20% of Chinese. You may want to justify the choice to enrich your data. Let us know why 70% Nigerian and why 20%. Then I'm actually really I don't want to say I'm not comfortable with your research, with the use of your reference. This is a 2025. And the issue of migration, it's a current thing. A lot of persons have talked about migration, and the headline they talk about is Castle 2001. So if you want to look out for more recent research work, and I think I have some like that in 2024, 2025 research, so please ensure that your references are actually recent. So then to the second presenter on the I think
sorry, please. Can she respond first before we pose the question?
Let us put out all the questions.
Questions first
And then
before the answers.
Why is it that I haven't tried to catch that by saying that?
Okay.
Because I also have a question for you. So you just make everything at once and then.
So, hello, please. Let us put the questions to the first presenter first, and then she responds quickly. Then we move over to the next presenter.
Okay. So mine is just more like the differential between what I expected and what we presented. Because the work was like everyday encounters, civil Nigerian interactions, and urban transformation in Lagos. So I was trying to look at those examples of the interactions that have been generated as a result of China-Nigeria relations of Lagos. I was looking at, bringing up issues like technology and communication, how that relationship has influenced the Nigerian and Lagos urban spaces. Now Nigerians now find the means of getting cheaper language communication that will be even largely within this urban society. Another thing is surveillance and smart cities that China is highly leading in places like Lagos, and the implication of that on issues of data privacy and even the sovereignty of our country. China has got supplying all of it and is in charge of all the surveillance. What implication does it have on country's sovereignty itself? And then the market and goods. You go to places like Barrington, Trade Fair, even Alaba International, you see those markets being filled with Chinese product, they form cheap, and then you see Nigerians tilting towards that much more. And then it was also raised along the line of the conversation, the place of the culture in our the importation of the Chinese culture in our daily urban life. Just downstairs there you see officials centers, and then you don't really see the replica of this on the other side in China. So these are some of the issues I was expecting to but it's fine. Yeah.
Sorry, please. Is it a question? I would like the presenter to respond to questions first before we go over to the audience, please.
Yeah.
Okay, please go on. Thank you.
Infrastructure development, I just want to understand the cultural assimilation of flagship between tribes and Nigerian community. And how the influence were not recognized social practices and community. I was in the media time. The wide government development story in the Southwest, I was able to know a lot of things that draw traffic to the industry west, so that where the other one was seeking about if something. So I quite agree with where it was coming from. But as well as going to most of this environment, we don't talk about the environment of education as a result of the mind and all of that. So the economic parts. So I absolutely want to delve deeper into the economic implications of the civil Nigeria on local business.
This is the global solution investments and those development within the area of outside leaders. When I'm committed to infrastructure development, looking into the development of Chinese companies, the investment in urban infrastructure projects, transportation system, housing development, or technological advancement and their effects on the urban transformation that you are talking about. Although in political sense, I would consider our suggest also designing the political dynamics between China and Nigeria, the influence of Chinese investment for diplomatic relations on local governance, policies and power structures in the urban context. The social dynamics, I encourage you to wait to the social dynamics within and amidst civil Nigerian communities, including issues of migration, identity, information, social stratification, and intercultural communication patterns.
Sorry, please. Hello, sir. Please, can you try and wrap up so that other participants can also? Yeah, thank you.
Just another question on observation. When you were making your findings, you make reference to economy, the engagement to economy. And in my mind, I was thinking, what about culinary? No, I know you're a geographer, but I was just thinking out loud. I've seen Chinese that are eating right? And I don't know whether that has not worked on the people they work with. Sometimes Africans are like just picking up their diets. Just.
Can I respond?
Yes.
Okay, so
Yes, please go on. Just respond briefly
I'm
to every
going to start
question.
with thanks for the observation. You mentioned the dates, well, I was theorizing. So I'm not just using CAST as a reference or as a migration scholar. So theorizing, I believe, in my own opinion, we see how we theorize migration. So whether or not it's 10 years ago, I forget the 10 years thing that they do a lot here. Actually, my decision does not matter. It's just the relevance of the argument, right? So whether or not it's relevant to what I'm arguing. So, and I'm saying that was not theorizing. No, that's just quoting. And so it's if that answers the question. The other part was about so your second question was
Yes. Justify, like we want to justify the choice of the 7.
okay, yeah, the justification of my of 7% of Nigerians. Okay, simply put, why are we more on Nigerians than Chinese? Because why Nigeria, right? So I get population here, there are more. If we're going to use percentage of Chinese people in Nigeria, in fact, I'll say that 100% is over generous for Chinese compared to Nigeria here. So that's why that is that. So about thank you so much for suggestions, Anthony. Actually, I'm very familiar with this word. In fact, one way and I we had a chat just last month. So yeah, I appreciate that. Looking into the word omission capitalism. I saw you have a clip on you have a what do you call it? The interview you have that too. Thank you so much. So the other thing about how do I differentiate that with the West, right? Because of course in the literature we all know they say, okay, China tells us we are not, that's what they're saying, we are not like the West. And scholars who have said, yes, they're not like the West. Some say they are exactly like the West. Now, for me, I'd say that from my own findings, not my personal experience now, I'd say that even though they live amongst the people, to what extent are actually interaction occurring? That's what I'm actually looking at. Now, one main thing I'll say for most of the questions is that, as I mentioned, it's an ongoing research, which means I'm not doing an analysis completely. In fact, I've never done an analysis. So, which means that some of the things you all mentioned, I was smiling because like things that I'm seeing in my data and which I recognize. So I really highlighted the things, There are several other things. I'm not even on mine. No answer at all. But all of that is I recognize and totally agree with, actually. So you mentioned that economic thing, right? So what I feel that it's majorly economic. I didn't say it's not any other thing. I said it's majorly economic. So about surveillance, smart TVs, and all of that, like, and I was trying to emphasize on the urbanizing part.
Sorry, Miriam, can you just try and wrap up so that we can take comments?
So in all, so it's more on from the bottom up approach, right? So that's not to say that in the analysis there wouldn't be what happens with the infrastructure, but we're going to look at beyond infrastructure, which is the theme of this panel. Thank you very much.
Thank you so much. I will just rush over to the next presenter, which is Philip. I have one question. We should take one question from the audience, and you just respond quickly so that we move fast. We have just 7 minutes, less than 7 minutes. So thank you very much, Philip, for your presentation. One question I have for you is that Chinese state's stance with regards to religion is usually presented in such a way that it respects local customs and practices, right? And they operationalize this by observing holidays, not local holidays. So in this context, I was wondering whether the cause of Chinese, you call it disregard for religious practices, whether it stems from official state or Chinese people. How do we, understand these dynamics between the official state stance and the Chinese entrepreneurs who sort of perpetuate this disregard? Thank you. We take one more question from the audience and then you react. Thank you.
Okay. Do you have a question?
Yes, but I think I will have this like reach out to.
And somebody also has a question. Okay. My question is about the set framework. So when I saw
one question, please.
Yes, just one for him. Yes. My question is about your trusted framework. When I saw critical discourse analysis, I was actually expecting because the aspect we use very well in the field of language linguistics. So I was expecting the aspect of critical discourse analysis that you actually do, because we have different types. We have Bandai, Withoda, Norman Fakelov. Which aspect of CDA did you actually do? When we want to subject that to our research so that to enrich them. So that's my question. Want to check that. So, Chair, can we take another question?
Thank you, please. Philip, can you respond? Sorry, please let him respond so that we cannot take more questions because we have very limited time, please.
Yes, to the first question, in the larger, I had less time, but I had said that I was looking at state and non-state actors as well. So not just representing the official policy of the Chinese government. The official policy of the Chinese government throughout, as even with its labor relations, has been clearly that it's respecting all of its partners. But as we've seen on the ground, the actual practice that's become, and this has been recorded through a lot of reporting that's been on the advocate side, a lot of labor unions, that there's actually been a clear abuse of those same policies. So there's a clear disconnect between what the Chinese state is saying and the actual actions of the actual companies as they do. And even within the company HR policies, they are stating that they will push back against any kind of abuse of the labor, but that still continues to happen as continued report. So there's a clear disconnection because one, the challenge occurs on the side of the African governments as well to police what actually happens on the ground. Because the Chinese government does not have the ability to police what happens on the ground. That is a matter of the African government. That's why one of the things that I asked was that the African governments themselves need to police the actions of the individual teams. As it pertains to the theoretical framework, it's something I need to look deeper into in terms of a clearer understanding. So take what you have to say and I'll look further into it.
Okay. There's a question for the last presenter. The house. Can we take that?
Sorry. I'm moving over to the question for Dr. Emmanuel. Yes, please. So, Dr. Emmanuel, thank you for your presentation. I just want to highlight a very an argument that exists within this context of China-African relations, which is the fact that Chinese engagement in Africa, serves as a source of employment, which most of the African government is not ensuring for the African people. I mean, scholars like Deborah Bottingham and a lot of scholars talk about economic zones that are being created by the Chinese and the influx FDIs that are moving over. Now, but the question is that most of these things, as you also highlight, come with some implications, negative implications. Now, my question is, how do we balance development and environmental concerns within the context of China-African relations? Do we give and which do we, where should we draw the line? I think that's my question. Hello?
Yeah, I'm with you. I'm waiting for the question from the audience.
Okay, please, one question from the audience.
But our time has elapsed now. It's 7 p.m. already. Okay. No, the Zoom is not off.
So, okay, Dr. Emmanuel, can you respond, please?
Okay, thank you. As a way of responding, my thinking is that, you see, yes, they provide employment, but there is a need to balance the level of environmental degradation that comes with this. There are laws that guides this operation. And once this is not done, it will not, development is well needed. I mean, there's no society that is not looking for development. But as long as it is detrimental to the people who need that development, then it goes back to zero. Development are meant for people, not for corpses. And so while the issue of mining is going on, the Chinese company who are involved in this mining should be able to provide sort of balance so that even the environment where they are working on, the environment they are operating should be able to produce to sustain the society they are bringing development to. So there must be a way of regulation, not just killing the society completely only in the name of development. I don't think it takes that dimension. That is not development. That rather will be on that development. Thank you. That's
So
my view.
Dr. Emmanuel. Okay, Franzo, please, can we get like 10 minutes more? Is that possible?
We can get 5 minutes more. 5 minutes.
Okay, so thank you so much for that gesture. So I think my question is for Akinola right now because he's the next. You sort of highlighted the possibilities, and how Nigerian government can actually leverage music as, and I mean, it's a tool of diplomacy as well that also highlighted. But you also highlight the challenges that with regards to this. So I don't know how you propose, because the issue of agency in China-African relation is a subject that is well addressed. How do you propose that, the Nigerian government advances? And even though, do Nigerian government actually project a foreign policy that wants to put Nigeria as a promoter of any cultural, character of the Nigerian state? So how do you respond to this, please?
Well, Nigeria, the major problem is that Nigeria, the foreign policy makers in Nigeria, they have never considered the utility of suffer. So that is, to me, the major problem. Until we have a rethink or a change of personnel among the people that are in charge of our foreign policy, I don't think we'll consider this option.
I mean, this is the problem you highlighted. I'm just, you highlighted this, but I'm thinking about the way forward.
The way forward will be if we have a Minister of Foreign Affairs that is sympathetic to the idea of soft power and public diplomacy. But for now, many of the Minister of Foreign Affairs that we have, they have this traditional understanding of foreign policy as within the state preserved. So until we have a change of personnel or a change of mind, what's there? The question about
Audience.
Okay, so my thinking about soft power is that it's more strategy. It's more like on the written strategy that you deploy without the other side even knowing that this is what you are doing. And then I begin to look at that Nigeria relation, to look at it in a very asymmetric way. It doesn't look so symbiotic, it doesn't look so balanced. So if we have that, how to what extent can we use soft power to address that unsymbiotic relationship that already exists? Issues such as the debts that we have, the dependence on China, a whole lot of issues that already exist that has made that relationship so imbalanced. How much can we use soft power to address those?
The idea of soft power itself does not mean that the country will have to rely on only soft power. You have to combine hard power and soft power. Together it is called smart power. When you use both soft power and hard power. Now, soft power will enable us to punch above our weight in diplomatic terms. There's a country today, Norway. Norway is a country of 25 million. And anywhere you see any international forum, you see Norway, whether it is a bilateral relation, resolving conflict. Norway has been able to leverage some of these soft power qualities to be on the limelight when it comes to international conflict. Nigeria, on the other hand, until we take that conscious attempt to market our intangible values that people all over the world find attractive. Until that happens, we'll still be struggling with our foreign policy goals.
We have one more question.
Thank you so much. I would just move over to Aditi just because we have very
Okay, we have one more
limited
question for
time,
Aditi.
please. The last presenter.
We have one more question for
No,
Aditi.
please let's move on. I think we should move on. Okay, yes, please. If you have a question for Aditi, which is the last presenter, please you can ask her.
Right.
Well, can I ask a question about Aditi?
Okay, that's the question for Aditi. Yes, the question for Aditi.
Oh, okay, Dr. Emmanuel, please let's take from the audience. Thank you.
Yeah, thank you. Thank you very much. My thinking is
Yes. I did say you asked why are children absent from decision making. My question will be, at what age, because I didn't hear that, at what age and what sort of decision we're talking about? Now, take note that these are two countries with different culture. There are times that we involve children in decision making when it comes to age, maturity. And that is why I'm asking, what kind of decision are we bringing these children to? Because there are things you teach children, there are things you don't teach children. You teach them some things that their IQ cannot contain, it should derail them. So this is different culture, and we have different exposure. So please.
Thank you so much. Aditi, please, can you respond briefly? Thank you.
Before I respond, just want to confirm that the question is about at what age can we involve children in the process of decision making. Is that the question?
Yes.
Sorry, Aditi, are you here?
Yes.
I am. Can you hear me?
Yes, please go on.
Okay. So what age in our yes. So in our experience where we worked with children from with over 20 countries, and the gross average that we've received is of 11, 12 and above. IQ is a conversation that can be have separately, because it's just in terms of mental health and psychology department. There are so many changes that have happened in terms of this subject of IQ that I feel like right now on this panel, I don't think I can fairly answer that question. By education, I'm also a child psychotherapist, and my professional experience has been in the social impact industry. So I also have an understanding of the importance of EQ and IQ. When it comes to children who come from such difficult background, they tend to mature at even younger age, but we do not expect this responsibility from them. At the age of 11 and 12, if we also look at the developmental stages, it's when children start inquiring about the outside world, when they start forming the concepts about moral responsibility. So that's the good time to engage with them. And of course, cannot also expect children to directly go sit in the parliament and start talking about what's right and what's wrong. There has to be a process. It has to be a patient process that as adults, we often find ourselves not being patient with children. So there are multiple factors, but I hope this still answers your question.
Thank you, Aditi, for your question. I think we'll call it a day here. I would encourage us to keep the conversation ongoing. I will send a feedback to the panelists, and I hope that we'll have the opportunity to meet again and continue this conversation. Thank you, everyone, for coming. Thank you.
Thank you.